Welcome to October 1st, 2025. My name is Kurt, and this is my daily Good Life meditation, a live video exercise that I do every morning at around 5:30 a.m. Japan time. I do this to remember my life objectives and principles, those which are outlined in my book, Going Alone, which you can read for free at goingalone.org. I also use the time to think about the last 24 hours, how I did with any noteworthy challenges or opportunities that I met. Did I handle them well? Did I handle them poorly? What can I learn from either situation? I review the 8 objectives of my creed, and I prepare for the coming day. But first, hello, welcome to new subscribers to the channel. It's good to have you here. I'm Kurt. I'm a 61-year-old American, retired, living here in the countryside of Japan, Southern Alps area. I do this as a journal entry, and I do it live via video. Anyone's welcome to watch and leave comments or criticisms, which I will read, but I'll do that when I'm done. I will just look out for any first comments to make sure I'm not, the audio is working. Marmighty says, "Hi Kurt, hope you and yours are doing well." Thank you, Marmighty, it's good to see you. But usually I don't read comments until I get done. Just want to make sure that the audio is working. Thank you, Marmighty. I also do talk about, since this is a video journal, I'm at liberty to talk about any topic I want for as long as or as little as I like. So bear with me while I talk about my life. This is all about me, this particular video, although typically it becomes all about us at the end when I read comments and we hear feedback and perspective from others. I like that element of it, but initially it's all about me. Just a heads up. I do another daily video called the Retiring in Japan video. That's also kind of a journal, but it's a journal, a blow-by-blow of the day as it unfolds. All right, as such, since this is a personal journal, I need you to be aware that I do talk about subjects that can make some people uncomfortable, like death. So just a heads up on that, if that's a squeamish or an uncomfortable topic for you. Finally, thank you to my viewers, my YouTube members, and my Patreon supporters for your active support. I really do appreciate it. And with that, let's get started. So first, I keep a notebook and I keep notes throughout the day. I'm looking at the notes under the heading last 24 hours. There's just the single word here, decision. And this word dovetails nicely into my blog post, which I've already posted on Facebook and other social media. I do it, that's how I kick off the day every morning, is I prepare the Retiring in Japan upload. I send it out to YouTube and it's staged and ready to go, but I don't release it. And then I write the blog post to a blog post. Typically that blog post has something to do with the preceding day, although not always. Yesterday's it did. So the word here is decision. And what that means is that I found that since I'm retired, I'm in 10 months into my retirement now. Wow, actually it's more than that. I'm looking into my 11th month now, closing in on a year. Now that I'm in 11 months into retirement, a lot of changes have happened. Lately, this is interesting for me to note that the timing on this. Lately, now it's like I said, 10th month going into 11th month, I've become very, very decisive. Now, I've always been decisive, but I've always been decisive taking a cautionary angle in the direction of my responsibility. So when an option or a situation presents itself to me in my past, when I was a family man and an employee, I would run that option of that decision through the filter of my responsibilities. How will my possible decision impact, one, my work? Because that's most important. I've always been the primary breadwinner in my family. So even ahead of the decision of the well-being of my family, what about my income? Will this decision have a negative impact on my ability to provide for my family and fulfill my duties? Second filter was the well-being of my family. What impact will it have on my ability to be a father or be a husband, etc.? Now, even when I was pretty well tuned in my late 40s and throughout my 50s as a human being, relatively speaking, I knew what, and I thought I knew what the answer was. I always gave myself a lot of time when making big decisions like this to really go through the options, to get out a piece of yellow legal pad and think about, write the pros and the cons down. What are the assumptions? What are the risks? How can I assuage those risks? How can I meet those risks? How can I avoid those risks? How can I capitalize upon those risks and turn them into opportunities? I always had to think through that stuff because that was my responsibility as a husband and a father and a mature adult member of society. I needed to think about what I was deciding and doing, at least for the important stuff. I didn't need any such deliberation when deciding if I wanted cheesecake or apple pie for lunch at the restaurant or for dessert after dinner at a restaurant. But I did need to make such decisions when deciding if my old employer called me up from another city offering me a job. Now that's the kind of thing that needs a lot of decision. Or if someone reached out to me and asked if I wanted to spend the weekend doing something. Because sometimes thoughts like that, there's more tied up to it than just spending recreation time. There's a social capital that is spent and gained in the process. Lots to consider. Even recreation is tied up in responsibility. Excuse me while I keep sipping and making the slurping noise. I'll try to stop that. Now, and it's interesting, some of you who are retired have shared with me your journey and your responsibilities and your changes. I've learned that it took a while to get over one. I don't know if I could call it guilt. Tim sometimes calls it guilt, and I think that guilt is what it is for some of us. Some of others have chimed in and said they felt nothing like guilt. I mean, responsible people nonetheless, but they said they felt nothing like guilt. Tim and I, if Tim's out there, Tim and I both seem to have experienced some phase of guilt, and to a degree, maybe a little bit of it left still. Tim, I don't know about you, just quite kind of an aside. I noticed, because I've been thinking about it, because you and I have talked, so to speak, here. I feel that guilt when I observe other men in their middle age struggling to fulfill their duties. And I think that I call it guilt, but maybe it's like others have said, it's not quite guilt. Maybe it's more of a sympathetic pain, and I think of it like being maybe like a retired submariner, some 87-year-old World War II, submarine vet who gets offered to come on an honorary cruise on a nuclear missile boat, right? And they're down there cruising at depth, and there he is, the old submariner, with his uniform and his cap from the World War II, and they encounter them while they're actually doing this routine cruise. They encounter some problem at depth, and the crew are at stations and doing stuff, and this retired sailor is just sitting there watching it going by. I think, Tim, what you and I might experience, because you're the one that has shared it with me the most, it might be kind of a little bit like that. It's like, it's not really guilt, at least in that example. It's more like a sympathetic desire to chip in and help, and feeling bad that others are operating in perhaps what seems like a life and death situation, and we're not pulling our share, but that's no longer our role, no longer our capability after a while, no longer our skill set either. Maybe that's why it begins to dampen once we realize that we're beyond the pale. Like, I could still chip in. If I was called back to work, I could still chip in. My skill sets aren't that, dusty yet. But but over time that won't be the case. So back to the sense of changing over time as we're going into retirement, letting go of the sense of guilt about being still working while others of not working while others are still at it. Getting over the sense of what to do with my free time. And that's beginning to lessen. I had a good portion. Yesterday's Retiring in Japan video was rather short, like less than 8 minutes. And it's largely because I spent most of the day just kind of hanging out. I, I laughed more yesterday than in a long, long time. I was watching stupid, silly videos on YouTube and just entertainment stuff. And I caught myself several times, LOL, like legitimate, out loud. I'm sure my wife, if she didn't have her headphones in downstairs, could have heard me guffawing up here about the funny stuff that I was watching. I was having fun. What the heck is that? Having fun on a Tuesday afternoon. That's new and quite welcome. Anyway, it's taken a while to get there. Now, here's the new thing, back to the word, decision. What the heck? I've noticed that this has just emerged in this last month. I've become really, really decisive about what I'm going to do with my time and what I'm going to agree to do with others and who I'm going to allow into my life. That last one is the one that surprised me last night. Let me take a sip of my coffee while I give you a couple of case studies. I've been getting offers from people to do stuff. I'll give you a couple of case studies. How all this happened within the last 2 weeks. One, I was invited to go hiking with another retiree, and I just said no. I don't want to hike. We talked about this yesterday, right? So if you're curious about why I said no, watch yesterday's Good Life meditation, because we went into some depth about that. And I surprised myself. I didn't couch it in, language that sounded like maybe, or like I really am busy, or I'm working on my house, or anything to try to kick the can down the road. I wanted to kill the opportunity, and I knew that my words would sound like maybe a little bit harsh, but literally I was with the person sitting face to face. They may even see this video. So if you do, know that it was nothing personal. My saying no does not reflect poorly on it doesn't mean that it was nothing personal. It was simply, I don't want to do that. I don't want to be going out and hiking with anybody. No, thank you. It's not you. It's not anybody. Except my wife and my family, my immediate family members. That's the only people. And even that, it's a different thing. But I think we talked yesterday that I might set up like a hiking course where I can take people if I really want to go, so that for my Patreon members, YouTube supporters, things like that. Exceptions. So that was the one that first surprised me, because we were sitting across the way, and that person said to me, well, why don't you, I've got some great hiking courses up where I live. Why don't you, maybe sometime you could come up and we can go for a hike together. And I just looked at that. I didn't need 2 seconds to think. I said, no, thank you. Yeah. And then I said, I'm the guy that wrote Going Alone. So, I leveraged the book as a prop, right? I only hike alone. And they were like, oh, okay, all right, well, I think they kind of moved on. But the thing is, I stated, and the reason I was so abrupt was I wanted to state it clearly, completely, absolutely, just this isn't something, because otherwise, right, if they bring it up again later, right, if they leave it open, then they bring it up again later, and then I have to kind of just no, right? I feel like when I did it, I felt like Blanche. Was it Blanche, or what was the Rose? It was Rose from Golden Girls, right? Rose was very clear, the older mother. Rose is very clear, what she wants, what she doesn't want, what she's decisive. And I've noticed other old people get like that too. They're very clear, and here I am becoming like that. Okay, now there was a second instance of this happening. Okay, there was that. Okay, now I think I forgot what it was. Now I forgot what it was. There was a second instance that happened. Now, but then yesterday something happened as well. Okay, so here's what happened. Now, I'm a social media content creator. I've been making videos and content on YouTube for 19 years. I've really never, blocked anybody. Cut to the chase. I blocked somebody yesterday, which is really, really rare for me. I don't do that. The only time I've ever really blocked anybody was when they were, and it almost never has happened, was when they were overt, um, like a racist, coming in, and you see a little comment war going on there, and someone's calling someone, racist terms, and there's no room for that. You're out of here, right? And I think I've maybe never even had to do that, even a single time. I don't really think I've ever blocked anybody for anything. I certainly am not used to doing it, and I guess it speaks to the comments seem to be self-regulating. I do get trolls that show up, and there's a certain pattern to them. They show up for a while on YouTube, and they'll watch every video I make, and they'll leave a nasty comment, and eventually they get tired of it and they just go away. It's always the same. They come, they try to do their nastiness for a week or 2 weeks or a month, and then they disappear, and I don't need to do anything about it, other than just to simply tolerate and observe. Now, sometimes what I try to do is I try to leverage my own principles, and I try to use their attempts, their nastiness at me, as attempts to strengthen my ability to keep my balance, right? To maintain my self-control, to know when to respond, and respond adeptly, pointedly, not in an engaged manner, control my response, or to know when not to respond. So I use them kind of like a sparring partner, right? Like, oh, here's a troll show up. They're gonna be here for a month. This is a good chance for me to, put on my what do you call it, the karate outfit, and a little bit for a while. I get to spar with somebody for a while. That's how I do it. But yesterday, I blocked somebody on Facebook. Someone that I've met in person, someone that I really liked when I met them. But you know how some people can have two sides? We actually met, and I enjoyed our meeting. And but when they're online, their comments always come across kind of like a tongue-in-cheek. There's some people are like that. They're kind of tongue-in-cheek things, right? You can tell that underneath what they're saying, they're really jabbing at you. And that person has been like this, for as long as they've been friends. This is on Facebook. As long as you've been friends on Facebook. And it's so much so that I'll even talk about it with my wife. I'll say, "Oh, look at this comment this person left. Right? This is interesting," and I have to decide I think the word is adroit way to respond. Again, that's like using say, okay, here we go, karate stuff like that. But I kind of draw a line at cruelty, racism, overt meanness. If the person's an asshole, well, I can tolerate an asshole. If they're just sarcastic, well, I can tolerate. I'm not a sarcastic person. I don't enjoy spending time with sarcastic people, but people online, they're kind of like, you kind of have to tolerate that kind of stuff to a degree. And some sarcasm can be really interesting, right? And some sarcasm can be quite enlightening. Some sarcasm also can be very revealing. Like, when people do throw these jabs at me, I mean, I do read them because maybe they're actually revealing something that I need to know about myself. And I do typically run it through that filter, but the vast majority of the time, I've learned that when people are being mean or saying hurtful attempts at hurtful things online, what they're really doing is they're saying at me. They're saying far less about me, as much as revealing what's going on inside of them. Their comments and their jabs and their upsets and their vocalizations are reflections of their own pain or anxiety. And I don't need to say anything. I've already said my piece as the content creator. I made the blog post. I made the video. I said my piece. If someone comes back with a jab, well, if it's a jab at something that I said that really needed to be given some second thought to, well, then I'll respond. And I'll say thank you. Thank you for revealing something. Thank you for helping me to see something. If it's something that is just, a run-of-the-mill meanness or just an expression or just, they're having a bad day, I'll just say something like, thank you for sharing your thoughts. That's my generic response. Almost never do I block somebody. I think like on social media, in 19 years between YouTube and social media, certainly less than 3 to 5 times have I ever blocked anybody. And that's always been because they crossed a line. And I know what that line is. I know it when I see it. I know it when I see it. You say something, something sexually untoward about my daughter, you just crossed the line. You're out of here, right? And it's happened only a couple of times. Things like that, right? You call someone else a racist comment, cross the line. You're out of here. So yesterday, this person that I've had a long experience with is kind of being my Facebook troll, right? Someone that I've actually met, someone that I actually know, someone that actually is a pretty respectable person. Nevertheless, they've got a kind of a sly trollness about them. I like to post, part of my rotation of posts every day is that I post alternatingly a quote, because I collect quotes in my reading, and vocabulary. Whenever I encounter a new vocabulary word, I learn that vocabulary and then I make a social media post and I share that, because the process of making a meme to go out with it helps to keep the word in my head. I learn. It's a learning process, and maybe it's interesting to others. Anyway, yesterday's word was dalliance. Dalliance means to do something for a short while, or it can also mean having a brief sexual encounter. The person that I mentioned to left a comment saying, Kurt, is this a form of self-confession? Now I looked at that. Now I take that kind of comment seriously. I looked at that, and initially I decided to go ahead and respond and say, something kind of a humorous response. I said, shh, it's just a dalliance. But later, while I was during the evening dog walk, I was thinking about it. And I was thinking, that comment crosses a line with me. I don't tolerate sexual innuendo directed at my daughter, or any inappropriate comments directed at my family that way, and I know them when I see them. I don't tolerate racism or various forms of very nasty behavior in my social media feeds. And I decided I wasn't going to tolerate that either. That person had crossed a line. So without any recourse, without any comment, I simply unfriended them and blocked them. They're gone. Now this isn't what I started to talk about. This wasn't the note that I had here. The note that I had here was decision. And what I'm referring to is how decisive I've become moving into my 11th month of retirement. And I believe that decisiveness has come about by virtue of the fact that the consequences of my decision making are no longer very grave. It's not like, back in the working days when I had a young child to support and she was young and I had to be a functioning member of the community and I had to make sure I didn't do something that would get me fired. I had to take everything and weigh everything carefully. And sometimes you don't know where a decision doesn't and how it will reverberate down the line and come back at you. No, it's largely not the case anymore. Sure, I could make a post that would get me banned on Facebook or social or YouTube or something like that, but that's not going to happen. I'm just not that kind of guy. And I don't have to worry about, my boss finding out, watching me make a post and saying I don't believe in God and getting offended and firing me because, for other reason, but really because they didn't like the fact that I don't believe in God, that actually was a concern of mine. I once had a very religious boss, and who watched my social media. I would be a liar if I told you that I didn't hold my tongue or bite my tongue about my atheism during that phase of my career. When I was working here and I was working at this very stayed in stoic, sober Christian school just down the road. I was a teacher there. And they watched my social media. You can bet I was very careful about what I said, very careful about what I said about Japan, about the community at large, all these things. But no, I don't have to worry about any of that stuff. So what's happened is now, there was never any, I've worked hard to cultivate my values over the years, worked very hard at that. So since my early 50s, I've had a pretty good sense of my values. When a decision moment comes up, the distance between the realization that I need to make a decision and the execution of making a decision was pretty, in terms of, they were lightning fast. I saw the opportunity. I knew what the decision was, but I had to run that through this filter of consequence, asking myself, what could be the consequences of me making that decision? Do I want to make that decision, and will I accept whatever happens? Or do I want to make an opposite decision for the sake of my family and my career and my well-being? Or do I just want to not do anything at all to ensure that nothing happens? So there was this filter that I had to go through for years and years and years. Now, beginning in December of last year, when my daughter was grown on her own with her own damn career, and my career is over, and I'm out of America, and I'm living here, and this house is paid for, my car is paid for, and I don't have to worry about money for the rest of my life. All those filters, the need for the filters, are gone. And the distance has shortened between an actionable, decidable moment and the decision itself. It's almost instantaneous because, like I said, the decision-making apparatus is in place. It's well-tuned, well-practiced due to this exercise largely every day. I don't need to do that anymore. I see the thing come up, make a decision. Someone says, hey, you got to come up sometime, let's go hiking together. No, thank you. No decision necessary. Someone leaves a comment on Facebook, and it's one that it's astonishing. I'm kind of like without words, right? Why would someone who is ostensibly my friend from real life suggest publicly even that I might be someone who cheats on my wife? Thank you, but no thank you. Goodbye. I don't have enough good years in my life to have people like that around me. It's a capital offense against friendship. It's certainly a capital offense against being a part of someone whose comments I'm going to have to suffer anymore. You won't have to suffer them anymore. You're gone. You can go do that somewhere else. Decision point, decision made, and it's happening every day now. They just come up. I don't have a lot of big stuff happen like that, but a lot of little stuff comes up, and I see it, decide, I see it, decide, I see it, decide. And for the most part, the consequences work out really well. It's one good thing about being an old guy with a lot of experience who's taken a lot of time to develop, codify, and ratify their creed, is that, and if it's a working operational creed, it becomes really easy. So that was a big day. I'm going to give myself 5 stars for that. It was a 5-star day for sure. Not just because I just was decisive, but because I came to understand why I'm being so damn decisive. As for the creed itself, let's get on to that. I'm going to go ahead and recite the 8 objectives, one of which I will read. I'm going to read True Limits. Okay, knowing that's objective number 6. You can read these objectives and principles in my book, Going Alone, into the chapter titled The Good Life. Just go to goingalone.org, click the button that says Read the Book, look for the chapter The Good Life, and it's in there. Or you can read it all for free. Objective number one is to be always ready to die. To have my affairs in order, my relationships in good shape, and my life's work complete. When I've got those 3 things in good shape, then I'm ready to die. I have to ask myself every day, am I ready to die? Yeah, I'm ready to die. Number 2 is to make good, to make good and effective use of my time, to not waste my days. I only have less than 5 now. I only have 4 good years left statistically. You know, the Healthy Life Index is the measure that suggests the average age at which our first major life disease will appear in our lives. And for American men in my cohort, it's age 65. I'm 61. So I got 4.5 good years left. I don't have any time to waste. I have to make good and effective use of my time. Honestly, I never had any time to waste. But especially now that I'm really aware of it, now that I really know myself as quite mortal. My third objective is to develop and maintain good and sound life principles, precisely those that I outlined in my book. 4 is to cultivate good emotional reactions, to become a human being that responds well to the challenges and opportunities that I meet, doesn't fly off the handle, keeps my cool, maintains my steady balance, which is objective number 8. Number 5 is to perform good actions relative to my values. Number 6 is to recognize my true limits and true opportunities. And so with that, let's go ahead and read that objective from the book. That's today's read. From page 250 of the hardbound edition. Recognize true limits and true opportunities. I will strive to live life in honest recognition of my true scope of control, which extends no further than my thoughts, actions, and reactions, and the consequences these might entail. I will ask myself how I may craft favorable ends from any circumstance. What misfortune, any circumstance, period. What misfortune do I not have the power to fashion into some instrument of virtue? When I wrote that sentence, I knew I was channeling Dr. Johnson. I could just hear Dr. Johnson write that sentence. What misfortune do I not have the power to fashion into some instrument of virtue? Is it death now at the door? Do not bar the way. I'm going to channel Dr. Johnson for a second. For the hour of our meeting is truly at hand, and I will not attempt to detain in vain any will, force, or consequence which is truly beyond my control. Thank you, Dr. Johnson. I know it's the case. I know I wrote this whole damn book. If it's hard to read, if some of you ever tried to read this, and it's hard to read, we can blame Henry David Thoreau for that. I definitely know that I was channeling Thoreau's writing style when I wrote the whole damn book, and Thoreau's hard to read. So sorry about that. And what role apathy in my discernment and feign engagement with a universe beyond the scope of my small control? And what reach must I attempt beyond the near pale illumination of reason? Number 7 is to do just one thing at a time, and do the thing slowly and deliberately and carefully. And number 8 is to maintain my balance in both body and mind. All right, as for today, it's a Wednesday, and my plan today is just to enjoy the day. I have a lot of things. I added something new yesterday. I added a blog post to the I added a blog post to the Going Alone website. I took the day's blog, the social media post, and then distilled out from it the Good Life Creed elements, the objectives and principles that I found within it, and then wrote a blog post showcasing the post and then explaining how the creed's elements relate to it. I was very proud of that post. Even if it's more of an academic post than anything else, the way I did this for a very clear reason. The social media posts that I do are my extemporaneous explanations of life in a journal-like post that are filled with my values. I kind of call them out at the end in the hashtag, but I don't explicitly call them out. I've always left it to people to kind of figure it out. I wanted to make an exercise, add a part of my day, an exercise to then go through the post and extract out the principles explicitly for discussion, and then create an actionable statement at the end. And I've decided that that's going to fill my afternoons, is that blog post every day. So look for that over on my website, goingalone.org. You can subscribe to the newsletter over there, or the blog post, and you can see those. Expect those every day. Okay, let's go ahead and read comments. And I don't have to race off to morning exercise this morning. You know, it was raining earlier. Usually we don't do it when it's raining, but the rain has kind of stopped. Maybe I should. Hello, Marmighty. Tim says, oh, I forgot the weather check. It's 21 degrees and 88%. 21 degrees and 88% humidity. Hi, Tim. Weather check from the UK at 9:40 p.m. is 13.6 and 79% humidity. Another lovely, calm, sunny day. Beautiful. Hello, Crystal. Good morning to you. Marmighty says, empathy maybe? I'm afraid I lost the context of what that was referring to. Something I was talking about before. Sorry. Tim says, I can't put my finger on the guilt angle. It's like I felt I maybe didn't deserve retirement at an early age, 58, when I was seeing people in their mid-60s still hard at the coalface, and I thought, do I deserve the luxury of retirement? Yeah, I hear you too. I feel the same way. I feel the same way. It is kind of a guilty, I mean, I'm sure that, anyone where, but yeah, I think you nailed it, Tim. Marmighty said, retirement isn't a luxury, it's the result of your hard work. You earned it. Thank you. Marmighty says, I think you did your time in the capital-driven world. If anything, I'd say your freedom from work should be earlier, but profits must be made. Tim says, I think also it's the ingrained work ethos that initially in retirement is very hard to just switch off and say, yes, that's me, done on the first day of retirement. It was something I wasn't expecting. Being a member of a few retirement groups on Facebook, the guilt thing is very common for new retirees, and people ask if this is normal to feel this. Oh, really? That's interesting that there are retirement groups on Facebook. Interesting. And it's interesting to hear that this is a commonly expressed circumstance and challenge. Thank you for sharing that, Tim. You too, Marmighty. Julie, hello, Julie. I saw a Japanese YouTuber respond to a nasty comment with, people are really going through things, and that really impressed me. It sounds like a really good response, especially given that if they said it in their second language. Evelyn says, I remember a guy was very rude to you on the Discord once. It came out of nowhere. I was so shocked and offended for you. I messaged you privately about it. Remember? You were so cool about it all. I do remember that person. That was so strange. That was completely out of nowhere. And I did kick them off the server after a while because they were just making such a fuss and they were so mean. And I still don't know why they suddenly did that. It was like some switch went off in their head. And I do get that maybe once every 2 years, Evelyn, that happens. And I'll get somebody like that they just decide that I'm their public enemy number one, and they're going to take me out any way they can. And they rail against the skies for a couple of weeks, and then they just disappear. But I didn't have time. I decided to kick them out of Discord because that really is my space that I created to have a place where people could come and be nice to one another and not have to deal with that kind of stuff. So I kicked them out. Some people find, Marmighty says, some people find, but I think you'll agree, Evelyn, I tried to give them a chance. Marmighty says, some people find some kind of pleasure in getting any reaction. I believe that they have unstable lives and a lack of control of their outcomes, so they try to control the reactions of others. To me, it's kind of like those that use profanity profusely, right? I mean, it's a cheap way to gain reaction and attention, right? Likewise is to be a mean person and a troll of sorts. Also, being a troll can require the execution of some interesting skills with humor and sarcasm. So it's a way to display a skill set maybe that doesn't get a good way to show otherwise, right? It's interesting, but again, it all comes down to it's more about them than the people that they're talking about. The people that have the most impact on me, that cause me to change my behavior for the better, are the people like all of you, like those of you that are coming. I won't start listing your names because I'll forget, but each of you that leaves comments here, the comments that you say have had a great impact on me. not because you're mean in any way, but because you say them from a considered, well-meaning and intended point of view, reflecting your own experience, which garners my great respect and my eagerness to read and consider what you say. I go away from these sessions reading your comments, and I'll go back and I'll sit at my desk and I'll think about the stuff that we talk about here for a long time. You guys are really, really special to me. And to that end, I would like to welcome you, if you're interested, over to the Discord server, where I'm having every day now from 10 o'clock to 10:30 a.m. Japan time, open session. People can drop in. It's like a Zoom meeting. You can drop in and talk face to face. Any of you are welcome to join. I know that 10 o'clock in the Japan time is rather late for people, some of you, but you're all welcome. Tim says, sometimes I post things on my Facebook that I enjoy hobbies and things, and there is an old work colleague who always makes a belittling comment or tries to make a wisecrack comment. I just don't ignore it. You have one too, Tim. It's somebody from my life that I know in person who, well, they no longer will because I blocked them yesterday. But isn't that interesting that we have that? Is that like back in our social circle of friends? I mean, even on Cheers, on the show Cheers, wasn't there that one person, was it Norm, who would just sit there? No, wasn't the postman who would have this kind of a smart alecky comments to say? You know, was that Norm? No, that wasn't Norm. That was whatever his name was, the postman, right? I guess every circle has one. Except we don't. None of us are like that. There's Robert. Says hi to everybody and chiming in at 72 degrees. You're late for here today, Robert. We missed you. 72 degrees and 25% humidity with an air quality of 24. Ooh, air's not so good today. In beautiful Napanee, Ontario, Canada. Good to see you, Robert. Tim says hi to Robert. Marmighty says like dilly daily. I don't know what that is. Hi, and Marmighty says hello to Robert. Crystal says, sexual comments cross the line. Politics can be heavy. Honestly, you and I seem to be pretty much polar opposites in that regard, but that's okay because we are respectful. Exactly, right. My brother and I are polar opposites, but we're respectful. We understand where we come from. We basically choose to not go over politics sometimes, although it's funny with my brother because he likes to drink beer. And he will have beer, and he's on political social groups, and all of the people in his life are on his side of the camp, and he'll find these memes and he'll send them to me by accident, right? You know, from reflecting his political angle, right? And I realize he's been drinking beer, and he's sending memes to the wrong guy, right? And I just kind of like, oh well, I just said, well, cheers, Lyle. And I'll actually say that back. I'll say, cheers, right? You know. He sent it to the wrong guy. But thank you, Crystal. And that's how it used to be back in the old days, right? I mean, we could hold different political views and then respectfully do it, but it seems like that's harder to do anymore. Tim says, Facebook is a funny platform. I imagine most people's friends are not really friends in the real sense of the word. Julie says, the discussion of decisions is interesting because I have gone through an opposite process of going from quick to decide to being very indecisive now. Really? Really? What's up with that, Julie? Because you seem like a person that has a mental construct of your values in mind. So it seems like then it wouldn't be a matter of you trying to align the decisions to your values. What else is fostering or coming to mind, I wonder. Tim says, I think I saw the comment you referred to, Kurt, but didn't understand the context it was made. I follow you both in name and as softypapa and enjoy catching your various snippet vlogs. Oh, thank you. Yeah, it was on Facebook. It was the Facebook Kurt Bell profile, and it was the comment to, and it's still out there, it was the comment to my yesterday's vocabulary word, dalliance. So you can see it. You can see the offending comment in my response, which then led later to my decision to ban that person. Julie says, I feel like my process, and thank you for being connected with me over there, Tim. I feel like my process of deciding is maturing slower than my physical self. So the metrics I use are based on being able to recover faster than I am able to do now that I'm older. Julie, sometimes you say things and others say things that warrant our second read, because I really enjoy your thinking. And what I really like about some of the most interesting people in my mind is that your thoughts are come together like a little bit like a puzzle box, right? You kind of have to put the pieces, and that's really interesting because you have to put the pieces together. And if you've ever read Dr. Johnson's writing or Henry David Thoreau's writing, it's the same way. You know, there'll be paragraph-long sentences that require multiple thoughts that join together to express a meaning. I don't think Evelyn's out there, but I know I'd get a hallelujah from Evelyn if she was there. She's another Dr. Johnson fan. Let me read your comment again, Julie. You're referring to the fact that you take longer to decide now in retirement than you did before. Julie says, I feel like my process of deciding is maturing slower than my physical self. Okay, so the decision is maturing, the physical self is maturing faster than the decision-making self. The metrics I use are based on being able to recover faster than I really am able to do now that I am older. I think I get it. See, there's two ideas there. Like I said, it's like a puzzle. You have to piece them together, because your decision making isn't as fast as you recognize. The decision making takes more time, so you control your decision making process to give yourself that time to make a more thorough decision. Boy, if I understand what you're saying, boy, do I respect that. Wow. Anyone who can recognize the scope of their capability and then adjust their life accordingly is a superhero in my mind. That's a superpower that you have, Julie. Wow. Robert says, Kurt, I've discovered over the years that statistics often serve best those who created them. My grandpa used to tell me often he had no idea he would live so long, left at 98. There's an example, Robert. It's so interesting. Every single time I bring it up, and I'm not complaining against you, Robert. I'm just pointing out it's as certain as the sun rising. After the rooster crows, every time that I mention the fact that my good years are limited, someone will point out that no, it's not the case, and then there'll be the anecdote of the grandpa or something like that. And I'm not complaining against you or singling you out, Robert. It's just so amazing to me that every time. Now, maybe the fact that it shows up every time is something that tells me that I should listen to what people are saying. And I hear what you're saying, Robert, and I know that there are people that live a long time. I know that we can also cite anecdotes in abundance of people that don't live a long time. I choose to feather my pillow with the perspective that I won't live a long time, that my health won't sustain. Because for me, that has an impact of rallying me to the front, of heightening my effort and my action to live well. And I think that for some people, thoughts of being dead soon or being disabled soon does the opposite effect. And those are the people that, maybe are fighting against me when I say that. Or they're not fighting against me, but they don't want to hear they don't want to hear me say it. But it doesn't have that effect for me. If I tell myself, Kurt, your statistics say, again, statistics, and I'd say that by 65 you're likely to have your first major illness, Kurt. Well, that is just going to cause me to really milk today for all I can of the goodness, and it's not going to make me depressed. It's not going to make me unhappy. It's going to make me alive and active. So again, I'm not picking on you, and I'm not singling you out, Restless Robert. I'm just pointing out that it's as certain as the sun rising. If I mention that my health isn't going to last, someone's going to comment that they're the opposite, or if not the opposite, at least cite some example of that won't be the case. Marmighty says, I see many parallels between your creed and principles and the lessons of Freemasonry. Oh, really? Julie says, you might enjoy this story. My 30-something nephew, who was an English major, never heard of Thoreau, and I was horrified. an English major, no less. Oh my gosh. I know he spelled his name wrong. That's right. That's right. It's a hard name to spell. Phonetically is just fine in this case. Absolutely. Whiskey. Hey, Whiskey. Good to see you. Was always going to ask, but what is behind your principles in philosophy? Any religious or other upbringings, or the opposite? Feel you want to make up your own creed? Yeah. So if you dig deep, you don't have to dig very deep. If you just scratch the surface of my values, you'll find Stoicism there. So I wouldn't say that I lifted the principles or objectives explicitly from Stoicism. I yielded them out of a lifetime of studying and practicing Stoicism. But there's a bit of Epicureanism in there as well. I'm sure there's some Christian values as well and other things. And it's basically the distillation of my life's effort of trying to live well. But definitely it's got the DNA of Stoicism in there. And so why, I think there's a second part to your question was, why did you want to make up your own creed? Oh, that's very easy. It's because I can trace it back to a specific moment of sitting against a tree. I was a Christian when I was 16 years old, and I decided by studying the Bible that I would no longer be a Christian because I realized that that the Bible, the stories within it didn't seem to have good grounding of reality. Also, I couldn't find any. I didn't really find ethics in there. It didn't seem to be a very moral book. And also some of the fundamental premises, like the idea of a soul, the idea of an everlasting God, the entire creation idea, and all that was wrapped up in that seemed like mythology to me. So I basically gave it up. I didn't say outright that it was wrong, but I said, I'm not a Christian anymore. So that left me then, Whiskey, in a position of not having a world. I didn't have an epistem. I had an epistemology, which was reason, but I didn't have a worldview to rest my hat on anymore. So I set out at age 16 to try to find one. And so so the book is the result of took me until my mid 50s, from 16 to my mid 50s to get to the point that I actually had a worldview. So I operated most of my life without one, or in the process of developing one. Robert says hi to Whiskey. Whiskey says, what's your idea on the Hone and Tatame in Japan? They all say one thing and it's fine to do another, for example, or they tell you what you want to hear. Well, I don't know, what can I say about it? It is what it is, right? It's the way the Japanese are, right? They have their public face and they have their private face, as we all do to a greater or lesser degree. Seems to work for them. The reason I ask is that usually the Gaijin end up converting to this way of thinking. But with your principles, I guess it sort of clashes with the standard Japanese psyche. Guess you may not agree. Haven't even thought about it in regard to that. I've never held my principles up to the Japanese model. So I haven't given it any thought, really. Marmite says, I don't think having a public opinion and a private opinion is uniquely Japan thing. We all have very similar behavior in the UK. Yeah, I think that's a human thing. I agree with you, Marmite. Robert says, Whiskey, but I think what Whiskey was referring to is that the tatame and the hone thing in Japan is kind of like, someone once said the Japanese are just like everybody else, but more so. They really are very, very, very good at maintaining a public, at screening out whatever the hell's going on behind the eyes. That stuff just doesn't come to the surface here. Whereas in the West, you can kind of see what's really going on in someone's mind bubbling behind their eyes. The Japanese, it really doesn't happen. They're really good at masking that. I think that's what Whiskey's referring to. So even though it's a human thing, the Japanese are very adept at it. Robert says, Whiskey, I know of a lady from Hokkaido who now lives in Osaka, who's been told she has toxic positivity. She runs with it. That's totally understandable. The people in Osaka are like that. They're famous. She's gonna be fine with that, and because the people from Osaka know that about themselves, they lean into it. They're proud of it, right? They look at the rest of the people in Japan as they got the stick up their ass, because the people in Osaka are bold, brash, by Japanese standards, funny, you can't really call it, Japanese don't really do sarcasm, but they're as close to sarcastic as you can get. So yeah, definitely people from other parts of Japan, especially the northern part of Japan, are gonna frown at that. But that's a tale as old as time. That's a tale. It's the same as the stereotype of between the New Yorker and the Californian, right? You know, it's the same type of thing. And the Californians proud of their beach bum, you know, attitude, and the New Yorkers proud of their, I'm walking here, you know. Claude. Hey, Claude. Happy autumn to Kurt and company from the Sun City, El Paso, Texas. Beautiful. Welcome. It's good to see you, Claude, so to speak. Robert says hi to Claude. Evelyn is here. Hey, Evelyn. Robert says hi to Evelyn. Marmite says, within Freemasonry, the contemplation of death encourages introspection. What legacy am I leaving, and what am I living? Am I living virtuously? Sounds very stoic. I wonder if the Freemasons can trace that back to Stoicism, I wonder. Evelyn says hi to Robert. Crystal says, regarding the Bible and mythology, my understanding is that it is a mix of facts and stories to get across the magnitude of certain points. When I thought of it like that, things worked better for me. I see. Julie says, in California, it is LA versus San Francisco. Precisely. And with that, we'll let Julie have the last word with just 4 minutes till Radio Taiso. Actually, radio exercise is starting right now. I missed it. But I'll go ahead and sign off for now. And I'll wish everybody all the very best. And thank you for spending time with me. I always really, truly enjoy our time, even though it's me doing all this talking, your comments and feedback. It feels like we're talking together, and you're a wonderful group of people. And like I said again, just a hearty invitation to anybody that wants to join, 10 to 10:30 a.m. Monday to Friday, and 10 to 10:30 a.m. Japan time, Monday through Friday in the Discord server. Open conversation for anybody that might care to join. People have been showing up. It's been nice to see people. Thanks, everybody. Be safe, but not too safe. Take care.